Well, welcome to Why Gold and Silver by the Wealth Coaches. I'm one of the Wealth Coaches. So, let's give you a little history of who I am. Alright, so that's me. I got degrees in economics and finance. This is my lovely girlfriend, Coral. She's got a constitutional law background and branding and a whole lot of other things. I'm going to give you a little bit about my history since I'm the speaker today. So, I've got over 30 years experience in the financial services industry. We'll go through a few of the things here. University of Calgary, graduated in over a 6-year period of time. 2 degrees, first one Bachelor of Arts Economics and then Bachelor of Commerce in Finance. Then I started out of school immediately with Investors Group. I spent 5 years there as a financial planner, and then I got introduced to one of our clients, another rep. We all went to Mexico about the first week after we were there. Well, maybe not first week, first month or so. And then we ended up going down to Mexico, and when we got back, she was looking for some roommates for a really nice house up in northwest Calgary. I ended up moving in there. I had the whole basement to myself, and 4 of them lived upstairs, and there was a nice little palace I got to live in. But through that, I got to meet someone else Suzanne, who introduced me to another fellow named Bruce, and I got picked off to come work as VP of Finance at a joint venture capital program with Marco Polo Marketing. We ended up bringing in a lot of financial capital for a really, really neat, innovative golf simulator platform. So I won't go into all that details, but I got into venture capital and understanding licensing and a whole bunch of other things. Then I started my own company in 2002, which is what I still have right now, Trilogy Promotions Inc. I'm the president of that. And through that, I've morphed it into a few different other brands. You've probably heard of the Red Mile, Dave, or Doug?
The Red Mile, yes.
The Red Mile, yeah. I started that. The redmile.ca is one of my websites, one of my businesses. So that's a whole concept to have an online digital catalog of businesses along the Red Mile. Now we have Google Maps that can really fulfill my dream of being able to walk down the mile virtually. What we want to do is cater to businesses that are in that space, do the multimedia for them, online profiles. I have Mike Lonsborough who's very soon doing the face of the Red Mile, so he'll do an interview of the businesses, and we'll cut it all up here and make corporate presentations for those businesses. I left, I didn't leave anything. I started with the World Health Club. I was the corporate sales manager. In fact, I started working there in 2002 as a consultant, and then in 2007 I became corporate sales manager. I found one of the executive branches downtown, opened that business, and that's where my concept of understanding membership subscriptions came into play, which is what we're using now in Space Central, which is where we're hosting this event. I left World Health, went to Trimore Capital Finance to do something similar to what I was doing up here in 1997. I was there for a couple of months, and then I got picked off by another company, Solid Financial Solutions, who came into town and wanted to talk about natural fancy colored diamonds, hard assets, gold and silver. We're focusing on diamonds that day. Of course, my girlfriend, being from South Africa, she says, let's go see diamonds. So that's how everything I'm about to show you today got started, was in 2012. Then I expanded the Trilogy Promotions brand into something specific, the Wealth Coaches and Asset Pro. The Wealth Coaches educating people about hard asset solutions, and Asset Pro about all asset protection, contract trust, privacy and protection of your assets. Because we do a lot of multimedia stuff, I was doing everything still under this brand. It sort of confused everything, so we started another brand called ThoughtWorks, which is our multimedia production studio and everything else that I just showed you. And then decided I'm going to create an online academy, because the technology is now to the point where you can do video streaming, hosting your private information behind a paywall where it can only be streamed and not captured or downloaded. So we started the Wealth Academy, and now we're building 38 different financial education training courses on that platform to basically take my lifetime of experience and put it online. 2020, during the scamdemic there, I started Community MBA, which stands for Community Membership by Association. So it's a service that helps the millennials especially book online services for their aging parents, like lawn and garden, snow shoveling service, maid service, electricians, all that stuff. So I'm building a whole model there, which will be not a franchise, but a licensable business model, where someone can say, I want a territory of 250 houses in the city. They run through the website and the model designer I set up, and everything's trackable. The homeowners, they pay by subscription. The contractors are paid by the job. I facilitate the difference in between. Okay. So there's a business opportunity there for someone. Then 2022, back in March last year, we started Space Central, which is this concept we've been talking about before this started. And the Red Mile Media, which I've now taken the Red Mile concept and said, I'm going to morph ThoughtWorks into Red Mile Media for the video studio next door, but catering just to the Red Mile merchants. So that's a whole new brand. And then I just started this less than a month ago, brandduzzle.com. So at the end here, I'm going to give you a handout to show you what this brandduzzle.com is all about. It's branded crossword puzzles that help a business market and promote themselves, educate their clients, get a survey back finding out what people know about their particular topic or industry, and it creates a reason for people to come back every week or every month to find the solution to the puzzle they just did. So that's a whole new concept. So there's my background. Not that I have anything else to do. Okay. This is one of my favorite quotes by Jim Rohn. If you're not financially independent by the time you're 40 or 50, it doesn't mean that you're living in the wrong country or at the wrong time. It simply means you have the wrong plan. So when I started Investors Group, Darcy Rogers, my manager at the time, she got me started on the personal development space. And he was my favorite speaker I ever listened to. Getting your mindset right. So if you want to come tomorrow at noon, in the boardroom next door, probably right in here, we're going to do our first session on mindset training. So every day of the week we have a different program. Mondays are Mindset Mondays. So we're going to clutter the cobwebs, unclutter them, and help people learn how to think properly about business and entrepreneurship and negative self-talk and goal setting and all that stuff. Here's what we call a success pyramid. When I was at Investors Group, we had a version of this. The numbers haven't hardly changed much in all that time. It's amazing. Do you know what, about 100 people that start at age 65, 5% reach financial security, and 4 out of those 5, by the way, are entrepreneurs, business owners. 1 out of the 5% inherited their money. 4% are still working at 65 because they can't afford to retire yet. 12% are broke, they just give up. 24% are dead broke, they gave up before 65 and just died of stress or suicide. 54% are fully dependent on a pension. Now, if these numbers haven't changed in my 31 years of doing this, hardly at all, that doesn't say much for the state of education and finance in our school system, does it? It's a 95% failure rate to work a job. Incredible. There are more people on the planet today than have ever died. Did you know that? So 8 billion people, that's more than the Earth has ever had since its history. Each person living in a modern society must transact with some form of money, no matter what country you live in. Even if it's in the Serengeti, you're trading with coconuts or beans or whatever, right? Or nuts. 95% die without ever achieving financial freedom or understanding the financial system. The opportunity for business growth and wealth creation has never been greater if you know where and how to look for it. I like this saying, you are today where your thoughts have brought you, you will be tomorrow where your thoughts take you. So that tells us we've got to work on the gray matter up here, right? If we got defective thinking in a lot of things, we have to fix that somehow, and the faster the better. So let's do a paradigm shift here. We're going to talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs in the context of the 4 stages of learning, which I'm just going to go over here. We're going to click on that. All right, so the 4 stages of learning. At the very beginning, you're what we call the unconscious incompetent. You don't even know what you don't know. Blissful ignorance is where you're at, and that's before learning begins. And most people reside here regarding financial literacy, which is why we have a 95% failure rate. So what we want to do is start moving up the ladder here. So eventually, with the education, you become the conscious incompetent. You basically know, hey, there's a whole lot of stuff I don't know, but at least you're aware of the problem, right? So now you can address that. And that's where learning begins. But as you get started in learning, you start to get some self-doubt, and most people will give up at that stage because they think, oh, it's overwhelming. I don't understand it. I don't understand math. Finance isn't really much to do about math. It's about budgeting. Then we get to the conscious competence, so you now know what you need to know, but you still have to consciously think about it. You have to write down a plan, you have to enact the plan. It's not second nature yet, but you're getting fairly proficient at it as long as you stay focused on it. What we want to get to is the unconscious competent level. This is where you instinctively know and do things without thinking about it. It just becomes reactionary. And that's the final stage of learning, and that's where it becomes a natural skill. So that's really what we want to get to, is those 4 stages of learning. And the way we do that is through education. And that's what the Wealth Coaches and the Wealth Academy is all about, is teaching and training you what you don't already know, because you were never taught it, trust me. Now let's look at the next one here. Oh, preparing your mind. So have you ever seen this puzzle before?
No.
So normally we hand out a piece of paper and a pen, and you do an interactive on this, but the goal here is to connect all of those 9 coins with only 4 lines without lifting your pen. So just kind of think in your mind, how would you do it? Well, I'm going to give you some assistance. Let's try this way. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we only drew 4 lines, didn't lift the pen, but we couldn't cover all of them. Let's try a different method. No, that didn't work either, did it? It's only 7 coins. Oh, it's starting to become impossible, isn't it? If I tell you there is a solution, now you have to start thinking outside the box, literally. Oh, here we go. Who set the boundary in your mind that there was a barrier here you couldn't go past? You self-imposed it on yourself, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because you weren't taught,
Programmed.
to think outside the box. Can we do it now with only 3 lines? Now that you know the trick, you have to make a bigger swath, right? Ah, but can you do it with 2 lines? More harder. With 2 lines? Who said I couldn't make the line thicker? Now can you do it with 1 line?
Yep.
Of course you can. Thinking outside the box. There's a little math problem for you. Or is it? What is the question mark? What's the solution to that answer?
Under 11?
You say that? You have to go back to our very fundamental grade 1 math. If
70.
1 equals 11,
11
70.
equals 1.
yeah. Who set the boundary that each row is a related pattern? But we fill in these patterns in our mind, right?
I was looking for the pattern.
So in finance, sometimes we look and we see a pattern when there isn't really one there. Or we miss one that's obvious. Okay, so this picture here, if you know where that is, September 11th, 2001. Now does that put it into context? Guy standing on the World Trade Center, an airplane coming at him. Is that a real picture or fake?
Fake.
Why do you say fake?
Because it didn't happen.
Well, if it's real, and we know everybody above the supposed impact zone didn't survive, how'd the camera survive? How'd the image survive? Do you know where this is in the world? It's a very close-up, zoomed-in picture. Now let's go back a little bit. Still could be anywhere, right? A little more distance. Any closer to figuring out the city? Ah, 9/11. So you see, standing back, looking at the bigger picture, gives you a sense of perspective. Then you can go backwards and go into the micro detail. So I kind of got that from my micro and macroeconomics degree. I've looked at both the big picture and the micro detail. So I'm both an analyst and a big picture thinker. So what is missing? What was that shape originally? Was it that? 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 Who said anything was missing? I posed the question, implying that there was something missing. This happens all the time in propaganda media, as we know, right? What virus? Not was it natural or deliberate release or an accidental release? What virus? What do you see there?
2 faces.
Did your faces dug or do you see a chalice?
Yeah, I see both.
I saw the chalice first, and then
I saw the faces first and then the challenge.
So your eyes can play tricks on you, right?
yeah.
What's that one?
A woman and also
Old,
Old woman or a young woman?
both. I see them both.
Right.
I don't see the old one.
There's the old woman with the nose looking down,
Looking down
and
like a
the
witch.
young woman is looking off to the
She's
right.
got a witchy chin.
So she's got a big protruding chin, big nose, hair. We don't have to dwell on that too long, but just fun illusions, right? That's an illusion for you. It's an impossible illusion.
3D.
So is that. This guy's
Yes.
climbing up. This guy's going down.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yep.
So, it's all about preparing your mind to think about what we're about to talk about. So hopefully we've expanded your receptiveness to think properly there. So, how do you protect your financial future with the ultimate monetary standard, gold and silver? So why do gold and silver always win the game? That's what we're going to talk about. Lesson number one, the further back you look in history, the farther you're likely to see Winston Churchill. Lesson two, the perfect storm. Lessons unlearned from the past and our current situation have created the perfect economic storm. The bigger the storm, the bigger the opportunity. And I think you can agree we're in a very big economic storm right now, right? So the battle is between currency versus money. And there's a difference between the two. The battle always takes place between gold, silver, and the paper currencies that supposedly represent the value of gold and silver. Over the last 24 years, a pattern has repeated continually whereby the battle has always been won. It's never not been won by gold and silver. Throughout the ages, many things have been currency: livestock, grain, spices, beads, paper, and now allegedly crypto. That's not a currency at all. But people will still trade it with the idea of converting it back to fiat currency. Otherwise, why is it denominated in US dollars, right? There are only two things in the history have really been money. By the way, here's a question for you. When Jesus was born, what did the three wise men bring him?
Gold.
Frankincense and myrrh.
Myrrh.
Gold to preserve his wealth in life, frankincense to preserve his health in life, and myrrh to preserve the body in death. It's all about preservation. That should be a lesson for all of us. Right? Cash is not money, it's simply a medium of exchange, which we call currency. It's like electricity, though, or water. If the current doesn't move, nothing happens, it dies. So constantly we have to have this spend idea. Keep the money moving, otherwise the whole system collapses on itself. In the good old days, on average, there was a period of development in the world that was a classical gold standard. There was no inflation. What is inflation? Inflation is a forever increasing cost of everything around us. And that occurs when you print more money, because everything is now denominated in those dollars. There's more dollars to go around, but no more goods, really. They're just changing. So it just raises the nominal price of everything. It doesn't mean the wealthier. That's called inflation. So along came the Federal Reserve. The currency was a receipt for money. Then the Federal Reserve, one of the most notorious and misunderstood privately owned institutions in the history of the world, stepped in. They're a private banking cartel. It's not a governmental agency at all. It's a privately owned bank that has unlisted stockholders to whom it pays dividends, creates currency from nothing, and is shielded from audits and all congressional oversight. We keep hearing these politicians say, let's audit the Fed, audit the Fed. Never going to happen. They control the money. They're not going to allow it to happen. When they audit it, you're going to be shocked at what's not there. It's privately owned. It's not federal. It's not a reserve. There's no money there. It's not a bank, but it is a system. It's never been audited either. It's a system, all right. It's a scam. So it's literally a license to print money. So let's show you how the money system printing works. So it was established in 1914, after they signed the Federal Reserve Act on December 22nd or 23rd, 1913. Well, most of the politicians were on Christmas break, so there's very few there to vote for. Every dollar since that date has been literally borrowed into existence, and here's how it works. The Federal Reserve creates the money. Then you've got the government over here, the U.S. Treasury, needing to spend money into the system. So what do? They need a loan. They go to the Federal Reserve and they say, hey, print us some money. They do. You print your money. And they ship it over there to the U.S. Treasury. And what do with it? First of all, they give a credit note back, an IOU, saying, okay, we owe you the money, granted. foreign corporation, not related to the government. We owe the international bankers $31 trillion today. So they print out government bonds, and those get sold off as IOUs. The U.S. Treasury then pays for bills, and the three big bills they pay for: military, medical, and prescriptions. Go figure, eh? They also create and sell bonds on Wall Street. And then you, with your pension plans, your mutual funds, your work programs, whatever, they invest in these various things. But it's nothing but a bunch of IOUs. Everybody owes somebody something. Just a stack of IOUs, non-stop. It's a forever scam. If the loans are used to pay for bills and obligations, then where does the government get the money to pay for the interest? So think back to when money started. We only had $100 in the system. And let's say you and I are the only ones that are, let's say the two of you are transacting in commerce, right? You're a farmer, you're a fisherman. You need grain, she needs fish. You guys have to ship that stuff back and forth. Your fish goes bad sometimes, your wheat spoils, gets wet. This is just, awkward to trade. So what do? I come along as banker and I say, I got an idea. Why don't we just use paper notes as a proof of ownership of these assets, and then you can just trade the notes, and at the end of the week, end of the month, you just go buy them from her and she'll ship you that much, rather than shipping it all the time. Well, if I put $100 of currency into the system, and I charge you 6% interest for the privilege of doing it, all right, so you got $50, you got $50. At the end of the year, you trade back and forth. Maybe she's got $60 at the end of the year, you've only got $40. And I come calling and I say, okay guys, you need to repay me the money that I loaned you. So you got extra $10, don't you? So you keep your $10, you repay me the $50. Oh, but you owe me $3 in interest on that, right? So you pay me $53, you're up $3. Doug, on the other hand, comes along and says, well, I only got $40 left. Well, you owe me $53, Doug, what are you going to do about it? You're going to borrow $13 this year, aren't you, to repay me the $53. So now I've been repaid my $6 collectively between the two of you. But you're down the whole $13, she's up $3. Now next year we have to loan another $100 into the system at another 6% interest and start the gig all over. Can you see from the very get-go, the moment we charge interest on money, the system will eventually collapse? It's a fraud. So in summary, since 1914, every US dollar has been literally borrowed into existence. The US dollar was chosen as the world's reserve currency rather than gold, and that's because of the use of the petrodollar. The United States can never pay off its debt. It can only borrow more notes to keep paying the interest on the previous interest. So how much interest are they going to pay on $31 trillion in debt? It's staggering. I mean, if the interest rates go to 10%, that's another $3 trillion a year just to pay the interest on that outstanding debt. The government has then created income tax so we can pay this interest. So they went bankrupt. They went into a shady deal with the international bankers who said, okay, we've got the problem solved. You guys just create an identification number called a social insurance number, and now your citizens are slaves to pay the interest on the money you went bankrupt on. When you write a check to the government for your income taxes, who are you writing it to? The government of Canada? No, you're writing it to an entity called the Receiver General. In a bankruptcy proceeding, the receiver is the one who receives the money. So every time you write a check to the government to pay your taxes, you're writing the check to the Receiver General, aren't you? Which tells you you're writing the debts on a bankrupt corporation that you had nothing to do with. What are you doing? Why are you paying that money? Because they deceived you to thinking you needed to. It's a whole other discussion. That's Red Pill Thursday. Why did cash become trash? Well, because on August 15th, my brother's birthday, by the way, 1971, Nixon took the U.S. off the gold standard, thereby removing all accountability. Fiat currency is literally toilet paper. Latin name means let it be so, or to move by force. So we dictate that this paper plastic stuff you've got in your pocket is money. And that's the only value it really has. It's backed by nothing, based on political decree. So here's two examples of the United States dollars, pre-1971 and after 1971. The silver certificate, see at the very top, redeemable in silver, payable to the bearer upon demand. up until August 15th, 1971. Now, it is a Federal Reserve note. It's an IOU. It's monopoly money. Bad decisions have bad consequences, which is why we have this mountain of debt. 1916, what do we have here? We had $1 billion of debt. End of the war, $25 billion. By 2013, it had gone to $15 trillion. Today, it's $30.3 trillion. Think it can ever be repaid? Let's take a look size-wise what $15 trillion is. Keep in mind this is 2011, not today. There's $10,000 of $100 bills. Basically an inch, not even quite. You could put $10,000 in your pocket, walk down the hall, nobody even know you have it on you. However, if you got $1 million, you're going to need a pretty big briefcase. And $100 million, if you believe that, you could put that in the back of your pickup truck. $100 million bucks. You're going to need a bigger truck, maybe a U-Haul van, for $1 billion of cash, of $100 bills. And $1 trillion you're going to need to fill McMahon Stadium, several rows high. 15 trillion, well I counted that last night, that was 30 rows high, 30 layers high of pallets, $100 bills. That's 15 trillion. Now by the way, that has now doubled since 2011, so 11 years is twice that height now. Oops, go backwards. All the unfunded liabilities, pension plans, Medicare, old age security, all these unfunded liabilities, at that time was 115 trillion. That's probably doubled as well. I don't know the exact number, but I think it's almost 200 trillion. So this is what we call inflation and debasement. All these things, insurance, utility bills, housing prices, gasoline, Medicare, food prices, tuition, they're all coming after your wages. Okay? If you work a job, that's where there's going to come after your money. So standard of living now versus your parents' time, is it better or worse? Well, you just be able to feed a family of 6 for $35 a week. Heck, you can't feed a family of 6 at McDonald's for $35. Maybe 2 or 3 people today. Fuel, $5 to fill your car. What's the last time you filled up? Was it cost you? $95 for me. Chocolate bars were 25 cents. I remember that. And they went to 30 cents. It was outrageous. That was grade 6. You know, the father worked, carpenter, mother stayed at home and supported 8 children on one wage. And they could stay home. So let's look at what inflation actually does over the long term. What, sugar, 59 cents for 10 pounds, 42 cents a gallon for milk. Oops, we got up here. We got bacon at 25 cents a pound, eggs 16 cents a dozen. What are they now? $4.69?
$8.
Ground beef, oh, for the organic farming ones, yeah. Ground beef 77 cents a pound, bread 7 cents a loaf. Geez, the loaves I buy $4.29 a loaf. Okay? A new house, $5,759, and your income was $1,555 a year. So what did that take? 3.7 years worth of income to buy a house. If you could just save every nickel for 3.7 years, you could buy a house back. Let's take a look how that changed over the years. So I won't go through all those details, but take a look at this. A new car was $900, average rent $40 a month, tuition to Harvard $420 a year, 35 cents for a movie ticket, postage stamp 3 cents. Okay, so the house was $3,600, but your income had gone up. So actually your relative years to buy a house changed dramatically after the war because of the post-World War II boom, right? All this economic activity was being stimulated. The war was just about over at that point. Inflation example, 1953, home jumped to $9,500 because now 4.2 kids per family were being born and stimulating the economy, incomes were going up. Still 2.8 years of income to buy a house. 1968, house price went to 15 grand, income went up to 7,800. That was probably the best time in history to buy a house relative to your income, 1.9 years. How things changed though. Now we got 1978. What happened in 73 and then 78, 79? The oil embargo raised the cost of energy dramatically, like it's going on right now. House price went to $55,000, income soared to $17,000. Oh, but the relative number of years it takes to buy a new home went up, 3.2 years, because of high demand now. 1988, $91,000 for a home, incomes have gone up some more. but now we're getting more and more working years to buy a home. 93, 113,000 per home. Boy, I wish, 31 grand, 3.6 years. Now let's take a look at 2018. 199,000 to buy a home. Income's gone up to 55 in the U.S. 3.2 years. So in the U.S., relatively stable, right? Around 3.5 years. What do you think it happened in Canada though? 480,000, 62,000 income, 8.6 years to buy a home.
Why the difference?
Exactly why the difference? Good question. You can delve into all kinds of theoretical answers if you don't have the answer. But the point is, it's far more expensive to live in Canada now because of our policies, and especially the Trudeau government, over these years, to drive up the cost of living and housing and everything else. Now, mind you, they got 10 times the population of the United States, so there's an economy of scale in building houses. But still, that's no excuse to have, almost a triple the amount of difference. All right, so let's take a look at something else in inflation. So if inflation is running 8%, how much must you earn in your investments to keep pace with inflation? Obvious answer is probably 8%, right? On the face of it. But that's not the right answer. You forgot to factor in taxes. If you're in a 40% tax bracket, you must earn 8% divided by 1 minus 0.04, the tax rate. Is 8 divided by 0.6 is 13.3%. So if you don't have money in a registered account, you have to earn 13.3%, pay the difference in tax to be left with 8% remaining to cover just the pace of inflation. So if your investments aren't earning 13.3% pre-tax all the time, you're going backwards, aren't you, relative to inflation? If inflation is only 8%, do you know what it is right now, really? Almost 18%. The government says it's around 7 to 8%, but it's coming down. They lie. They don't tell you, because they changed the way of calculating inflation a long time ago. So just to keep pace with inflation, you have to earn over 13% to have no growth in your wealth. But you will never retire that way, will you? So do you remember back in 1928? Probably not, but your parents might. Gold was $21 an ounce, silver was $6.15 an ounce. You could buy one of these Coke dispensing machines for $12.50 and charge a nickel for pop. 1933, gold went up, but silver dropped dramatically to 25 cents. That's probably the best time in history you could have bought silver was in 1933, which is basically what starting with the Great Depression. By 1951, look at silver went up to $9.29. That's 40 times your money if you bought it at 25 cents, just in 10 years. Silver went up about 30%. Okay? 1958, silver and gold pretty much went down just a little bit. So let's look at to retire in comfort. And comfort is different for everybody, but to be comfortable, not have to worry about money, have a decent lifestyle, take your vacation every once in a while. You've got to double your investment portfolio about every 7 years. Have you ever heard of the rule of 72? So you take the number 72, divide it by your rate of interest or your rate of inflation. That tells you how many years it takes to double your investment or for inflation to eat away half of your investment. Okay? So 72 over 7, 10%. It's applying a 10% rate of return. So with inflation running 8% and your tax bracket at 40%, we already know you must earn 13% to break even, just on taxes and inflation. So how much must you earn in your investments to retire in comfort, net of taxes and inflation? The answers are relatively simple, 13.3 plus 10%. So, Doug, are you earning 23.3% on your investments every year in and year out?
No.
And you're going backwards. Got to figure out how to do that, right? So this is not possible for most people unless you take a lot of risk. And the more risk you take, the more likely you will lose your investment, right? Which is why in economic troubling times, a lot of the multi-level marketing scams come out of the woodwork. Promising riches, instant riches and wealth and fame. It doesn't work. All right. Alright, so summary, we went off the gold standard in 1971. Back then a wife went to work. Now they needed two incomes to buy the same number of goods. 1990s, families could no longer work to save money. Last decade, wife, kids and the pets probably worked. Still no savings, and family now lives on debt and credit just to get by. Sound familiar to anybody?
Done by design.
Yeah. Average family is forced to borrow just to make it, has no savings, no retirement, and no financial understanding. I'm hoping to change that. So the opportunity, though, is gold and silver, and they always win, and I'm going to show you why. So price versus value, there's a difference. So if something costs more currency, it doesn't mean it's more valuable. Is a loaf of bread for 5 cents in 1905 any more valuable to your body than bread in 2023 at $5 a loaf? No. It's probably worse for you because it's probably got poisons in it, right? But assuming all things equal, is it really worth that much more? Why do we lose 99% of our purchasing power? So we've got to learn to measure things by using inherent relative value to something other than currency. When we do this over time, we see that almost nothing goes up in value, it just shifts in relative value. So you could measure gold in terms of barrels of oil, or you could measure water in terms of bushels of wheat, right? But if you keep that track over time, you'll be able to see where the change is occurring from one asset class to the other. So gold and silver maintain their purchasing power, they never change. What changes is the price, not the value. So when you look at gold, it's $24 US an ounce for silver, and gold is $19.28 or something yesterday, US an ounce. Is that more value for the gold than it was back in 2020 or 2008 or 1953? And so what does that gold or silver represent in terms of purchasing power today using the digits that we call currency? That's what we have to look at. So for example, in Roman times, 3,000-4,000 years ago, 1 ounce gold coin would buy the average Roman senator's entire toga, sash, sandals, belt, and he could sit there in the Roman Politburo and be a politician. Well, same 1 ounce gold coin would buy the same gentleman's suit today. $2,500 Canadian, roughly, right? You get a pretty nice suit and pants and shoes and underwear and cufflinks for $2,500. In Jesus' time, the chicken was a half an ounce of silver. Guess what an organic chicken today is from a Hutterite farm? Half an ounce of silver. Right? About $20. Consistent metals, consistent trend. For the last 4,500 years, gold and silver have been this safe haven asset and the predominant form of money around the world. Gold and silver is going on centuries now with zero inflation. The last 2,400 years has records proving that gold and silver always win every single time. So let's go back to Athens. 407 BC, they were one of the first democracies. They invented the free market system. But of course, human nature got involved and greed got involved and they started debasing their currency. But what they started mixing their gold with copper and other metals to debase the currency. So you received a 1 ounce gold coin next year or the year after, it wasn't pure gold anymore, but you wouldn't know, would you? You weren't a smelter, you didn't know how to determine whether it was real or not. But depending what issue they had, they would know which was 100% gold, which was 90%, and then eventually 50%, and then gold plated, right? And in 2 years, the money became worthless. Those who held on to the original gold coins, however, they witnessed their purchasing power increase exponentially. So people ask me, well, should we be buying and selling and trading gold and silver coins? Generally not. Buy them and hold them forever. They're your emergency store of wealth. If and when you ever need it, you can buy your freedom, as the Jews found out in the 1930s and 40s, right? How to get out of Germany. They gave up their wealth, but they bought their life. So it became very valuable at some point. Now, of course, Rome, not to be undone, they repeated the pattern. And by 284 AD, coins were tin-plated, copper or bronze. What do you think led to the fall of the Roman Empire? Right? They created the first welfare state. Inflation was raging. That was the world's first hyperinflation. They didn't learn the lessons of the past. So, wealth coaches, our motto is learn from history, reap the rewards, right? If we don't dive into what happened in the past and learn that these patterns tend to repeat over time, we're going to be taken advantage of by the system.
Same system.
Yep. Now, using those inflationary rates, a pound of gold at that time in Rome was 50,000 denarii. By mid-century, it had inflated to 2.12 billion. Can you imagine having to pay 2.12 billion denarii for the same gold coins back then? The gold coins didn't change. What changed is the number of widgets you had to buy them with, right? Called denarii, because of hyperinflation. In perspective, 50 years ago, a car was $2,000 Canadian. Today, it'd be worth 85 million at that rate of inflation. So we're nowhere near hyperinflation, but if we keep printing money in debt, we run the risk of having hyperinflation. History repeated in Germany and the Weimar Republic in the 1920s. World War II went off the gold standard after Germany and suspended the right to citizens to redeem their currency for gold and silver. The cash became worthless. They were using as kindling in fireplaces, burning your cash to stay warm. The number of marks printed quadrupled. In 1919, savings fell 90%. Why? Because every day your currency was becoming worth less and less. So if you didn't spend it to buy stuff right now, it would be double the price a week from now. So there was no encouragement to save money. By 1933, they had 33 printing presses pumping out 45 billion marks a day. That sounds like the U.S. Federal Reserve, doesn't it? By November 1933, there was 500 quadrillion marks in circulation. Now, of course, that's why inflation took off, because with 500 quadrillion marks floating into the same economy, it's like a rising tide. All the boats rise together, right? All prices went up. Inevitable. Purchasing power fell by 97%. So what used to cost 12 marks to buy a pair of shoes suddenly was 30 trillion marks. You had to wheel up to the store with a wheelbarrow full of cash to buy simple items. A loaf of bread was a half a mark, went to 200 billion marks. An egg, 0.08 marks, went to 80 billion marks to buy an egg. Stock market went from 88 points to 26 billion. Hey, but I got rich on the stock market. Did you really? What's your relative purchasing power? Gold and silver, 100 marks per ounce, suddenly we're 87 trillion marks. Oh, I got rich on gold and silver, didn't I? What is your relative purchasing power if you convert it back into fiat? That's the point. So what does 1 ounce, or 400 ounce gold bar look like? Well, it's 12.5 kilograms, or 25 pounds. That's like a fairly heavy barbell. $800,000. Gold bar to the right is worth $800,000, on the left $2,000 an ounce. Gold weighs that much, 27 pounds, which is about the equivalent of 3 1-gallon things of milk. Pretty heavy. In the back of a Chevy, you could put about $106 million, 3,670 pounds of gold, and that would pretty much break the suspension beyond that. That's 133 400-ounce bars, 53,000 ounces of gold bullion. Semi-truck, well, you could break the suspension on that big rig if you had $1.6 billion worth of gold. Pretty heavy stuff. Highly concentrated form of wealth, right? And if you took all the gold reserves of the United States, about 506 billion worth, that's 8,133.5 tons, that would pretty much fill the hockey arena. Can you imagine filling the ice in Saddle Dome with gold? That's all the U.S. gold reserves. If you put it all in one place, that's what it is. All the gold reserves ever mined, 400-ounce bars wouldn't even be as high as the Empire State Building. Isn't that unbelievable? We've been mining gold all these centuries, and it's all the gold in the world. In fact, if you look at all the different countries, the way it's split up, that's how it looks. The U.S. being the biggest, of course, Russia down here, Iran, India, everyone's got a lot of gold. But all the gold melted into a cube would be about a cubic Olympic-sized swimming pool. If you melted it all down in one giant cube. Not very much gold, is it? Do you know if we took all the gold ever mined, divided amongst all 8 billion people, you'd have about 1/3 of an ounce of gold per person? But if you took all the silver, you'd have 1/14 of an ounce. Why isn't silver way more expensive than gold? Food for thought. Is it underpriced? Uh-huh. That little cube down there, by the way, right there, that one weighs, 1 metric ton is worth about $50 million. $50 million you could fit right here. Let's talk about stuff that we buy for ourselves relative to dollar denominations. That's a 1 ounce gold bar right there. You got half ounce, quarter ounce, you know, all the way down to gram sizes of gold. So let's just summarize again. Every time governments remove gold and silver standard from the dollar, the currency eventually dies. On average, by the way, it takes about 100 years for the currency to die after they took something off of a gold-backed standard. And we've had the Federal Reserve note since 1913. So we are 109, 110 years into this scam, aren't we? The only reason it hasn't collapsed yet is because the US dollar is the international standard for oil. That could change. Those who hold currency will become poorer and poorer. So just cash in your vault, under your mattress, not even in the banking system earning interest, you're going to get poorer and poorer. Even in the bank, you're not getting rich anyway. Those who hold gold and silver, they're increasing their purchasing power exponentially and they become very wealthy. This is the history lesson that we have to understand. Wealth is neither created or destroyed, it simply transfers from the uneducated person to the educated one. So the con artists that know how the money system works come along and they convince you through some seminar, some network marketing scam, not scam, opportunity, you're going to get rich. They just know how to work it better than you. Come to me and ask me a question and I'll tell you whether you should look at it or not. Over the last 2,400 years of recorded history, gold and silver have always won. This is a global problem which has never happened before that we're living in right now. And of course, like Kiyosaki says, the bigger the crisis, the bigger the opportunity. And the only solution is to back your money with real currency, gold and silver, which is exactly what the international banking cartel does not want to do, but yet they do it themselves by buying up the gold and silver. They depress the prices in America during the day, they buy it up overseas overnight, drive the price up, and they get an arbitrage, and they make millions and millions of dollars an hour doing this. Okay, so why do you want to own gold and silver? Insurance and investment purposes. I mean, why do you put insurance on your house, right? In case it burns down. Through the many economic debacles in human history runs one common thread. Those who financially survive do so because they own gold. That was written by Michael Casares, the ABCs of Gold Investing. Gold is hoarded. So most of that gold, 90% of all that gold ever mined, is still available. It hasn't been lost to the environment, hasn't been evaporated into space or lost in the ocean. It's almost all still recoverable. So gold simply cannot be destroyed very easily unless it's evaporated. It's used as money and also used as jewelry. And that's one of the big ways that money transfers from generation to generation, especially in India and China. They've got a huge history of gold. Mike Maloney, who's one of our gurus in the industry, you guys heard of Mike Maloney? Goldsilver.com is his website. He talks about wealth cycles. He's really smart on this stuff. He's got a great series. I've got it on my website as well. History of money. He talks about gold and silver, and currency and debt. And I'm going to play a video by him shortly here. And he says, the golden bull is still young, but is bigger, brawnier, more powerful than any golden bull the world's ever seen, yet most of the world still seems blind to it. 8 billion people, there's probably less than 1 million that really understand what I'm talking about, or even heard it before. I'm continually amazed at the staggering number of investors who lack vision enough to see it, even with someone jumping up and down yelling, look, there it is. So silver is used and consumed, other than gold, because gold is used in jewelry, but silver, we use that as an industrial metal, and it's used in a lot of different things, like silverware, computers. It's woven into cleaning or cleaning products, put into fillings, silver amalgam fillings, electronics. I mean, that's just been a boom to the silver industry. It's used up massive resources of silver just in electronic equipment. But because it's relatively inexpensive per ounce, and it's expensive to try to extract it, it's not easily taken back out of those things. So that's why the silver just seems to keep being depleted. Right? It's not recoverable economically at this price point. It's woven into fabrics like Lululemon for antimicrobial effects in garments. You can drink it. Colloidal silver is a good antimicrobial, but don't overdo it. And of course, it's used in all these fancy new electronic light bulbs and green energy stuff. For the first 2,000 years, gold and silver were the primary form of money across the globe. The exchange rate between the two metals averaged about 12 ounces of silver to 1 ounce of gold. So if you take the price of gold divided by the price of silver, that tells you the gold-silver ratio. Historically, it's been around 12. If you take the price today divided by the price of silver, you're going to get around 75 to 1. So that means either gold has to drop about 25%, or it has to drop 75%, down to 25% of its current value, or silver has to increase, where's that number is? Forgot the number. Has to increase dramatically to get to that same as silver gold ratio, historically about 12 to 1. So that's about a 5 times ratio, five times increase. Now, mines, which is where all these precious metals come from, are rarer now. It would take about 15 years. If you had a silver find right now in a mine, it would take about 15 years to build that mine and get production up to scale, and then start getting our inventory silver levels back to regular historical amounts. So in 1980, we had inventory in the U.S. of 2.5 billion ounces of silver. By 1990, it dropped 2.1. Now the stockpiles after all this are a mere 20 million ounces. So that's all the reserve inventory we have, stockpile of silver. How can the price only be 21, 22 bucks, 24 bucks an ounce? It's incredible. It's only a matter of time before it takes off. So here's the power of silver. Here's a real example. In 1971, you could have bought a single family home for $21,000. And by 1980, a decade later, it almost a little over doubled in price to $42,000. Now, if you had taken, it's 100% return, by the way, a little over 100% return, you would have been able to buy 14,865 ounces of silver for the 20,663. However, if you had not bought the home, but had bought 15,000 ounces of silver and held on to it for 10 years, I want you to take a guess what you think it went up to. So instead of being worth 42,000, what do you think it would have been worth?
$1 million.
Pretty close, $770,000. That is a 3,600% rate of return. You could have held on to that silver for 10 years, sold it, and bought 18 homes at $42,000. There's a huge increase in wealth. Now, what happened from 1971 to 1980? That was the period of hyperinflation with the two energy oil shocks from OPEC in 1973 and 1978. So in that decade, we saw prices of everything rise dramatically, didn't we? What are we seeing right now? Price of energy, and war, and food, everything going through the roof. So if it's already happening, and yet the silver price hasn't jumped, what does that tell you if you learn from history? Get silver now before it does this again. Put as much as you can into silver, and hang on to it for 10 years. Then you flip it back into whatever you want at that time. That's what I'm doing. So this is Mike Maloney. I'm going to play this little video. It's about 4 minutes long. He talks about this concept of wealth cycles. So I'll let him talk because he's the master at it.
So eventually one becomes overvalued and the other one becomes undervalued and the cycle reverses. And then it reverses again. And what is happening is they're printing currency at about this rate, and that's the reason you can't see it. So if you start measuring one thing with another thing, so you're measuring stuff against stuff, instead of using currency, what you discover is that everything is trapped in this valuation channel, where it goes from overvalued to undervalued to overvalued to undervalued again. And there's the thing that you're measuring it with is doing the exact opposite mirrored wave. The trick is, sell the overvalued asset near a peak if you can, find the undervalued asset, and I call this wealth cycles. And if you can do that, it's a road to true wealth. You're escaping that valuation channel. So here is a real example. This is the Dow measured in points. Take this. This is the price of the Dow measured in gold. Flip it upside down and you've got the price of gold measured in the Dow. Put these two things together and what you find is that there's a cycle here. And if you had ridden stocks up to 1929 and then sold your stocks and bought gold, and then in 1932 gone to gold, and then back to stocks, I mean, and then in 1980 go back into gold and so on. This is a road to true wealth. I mean, you're making massive gains here. I show two hypothetical families in my book, and one goes from 35 bucks to 11,000 bucks over that time period, and the other one goes from 35 bucks to 11 million. And that is the difference. One family creates a dynasty, the other one
Wow.
didn't even break even. This is the gold Dow ratio instead of the Dow gold ratio. So you're measuring gold's value per ounce, measured in what percentage of a share of the Dow that it will buy. And what it's showing is that gold is nowhere near a bubble. It's very undervalued here. It still has to go up. The mean should be 25% or more. And in every bubble in history and in nature and I used to be an electronics engineer in physics, when something is out of whack, when it reverts back to the mean, it overshoots. If it's more out of whack, when it reverts to the mean, it overshoots further. So I'm expecting a day where the price of gold will be double or more the points on the Dow.
Interesting, eh?
Very.
So you think outside the box, right? When you start to see a different perspective of looking at something, all of a sudden the true pattern emerges. But people get this buy and hold strategy, just buy one thing and hold on to it forever. No, we're not here to say buy this commodity, gold and silver. Buy the asset class that's undervalued relative to everything else, like oil and the stock market, right? Because you got your commodities, you got your stock market and real estate cycle, and these things tend to move in different waves back and forth. So paper assets, commodities, and then real estate and stocks. They all move in different waves. Sometimes they move together, other times they're swinging at opposite ends of the spectrum. So if you can sell one, like you said, at the high or near a high, switch to the one that's way down here, and then ride that wave. It might take 5, 10, 15 years, 20 years. Then you sell out of that one, go back into this one, which now has been undervalued. And you catch in these waves. And these happen in 10 to 15 year cycles. They also happen in generational cycles, 25-year cycles, and then long-term multi-decadal cycles of about 100 years. And that becomes what's called a super cycle, and that's, I think, where we're at right now. Highly valued, overvalued stock market, highly overvalued real estate market, undervalued commodity market, and as these things swing, you're going to see a huge uptick in the commodity side of things relative to the others. 1965 Ford Mustang, who didn't want one of those, right? Classic automobile. First edition was $2,368 US. Wouldn't you love to buy it for that price? The exchange rate at that time was $1.07, and the gold was $35.50 an ounce. So that was fairly stable, that $35.50 an ounce, right up to 1971. At that time, it would have taken you 67 ounces worth of gold to buy that classic automobile. Okay, let's say you did that. That cash value now of that 67 ounces, $152,000. Wow. Or 130,000 Canadian. In the US. That Shelby, I could buy that in Calgary on March 2nd this year for $96,000. Same car. But at the price of gold, it was only 39 ounces, not 67. So if I'd had the gold and hang on to it since 1965, and then decided to hand that down to my grandkids and let them buy a car with it, it would only have taken 39 ounces. They would have had extra 23 ounces of gold left over, which is worth $55,000. So you could have had the car and some gold, right? And that's called generational planning. That's what the super elite of the world do, is they teach their kids these long-term, multi-generational strategies, and they ride it out, and they transfer their wealth using trusts and foundations and everything else to preserve the money in the family. So interestingly though, in 1965 Ford Mustang, I found one of classic cars for $67,500, 85,000 Canadian, which is about the same as the 35 ounces of gold. See how gold and silver even preserve purchasing power in an automobile? This house here is 2 doors down from my dad's. So my dad's house is right about there. That's where I grew up. This is just down the corner. This house was rebuilt after the previous house burned down. It was probably 25 years ago. And I looked up the cost of this house in 2018, just out of curiosity. I'm doing all this presentation.
No.
That corner home was valued at $37,500 in 1966. That's when we moved in 3 doors up, 2 doors up. At that time, the U.S. exchange rate was $1.07 and $35.50 an ounce. So it would have taken 981 ounces worth of gold in 1966 to buy that same house today. Or even at that time, I should say. The cash value of that gold was worth 1.6 million in 2018 when I started doing this analysis. By 2020, so basically the next day is when Trump locked everybody down in the scamdemic, the day after I did that, $2.1 million. Inflation had already taken off in just 2 years and raised the price about $500,000 in 2 years, just from inflation. Then the lockdowns and the economic stimulus pumping out money came into the system. And in the next 2 years, up till March of this year, the price of that gold went up to $22.4 million. That same 981 ounces of gold is now worth $2.4 million. Now I looked up the value of that house, by the way. And that house at that time in 2018 was valued almost to the penny, $1.6 million on the property tax assessment, which was 1 ounce of gold different after all that time. So just 4 years, the excess value in terms of gold had increased $800,000. So remember I said gold and silver preserve your purchasing power in spite of inflation, but at certain times of hyperinflation or accelerating inflation, you can increase your net worth relative value temporarily. So would it be a good time to sell that at that time? Yes. We saw the price of gold and silver drop throughout the summer. Now it's recovered back to where it was. But you had an opportunity to sell in March, get the heck out, buy it all back and save yourself in September and November. In that time frame, you could have bought it at 20% less than it was now. Now, as of March this year, price of gold was that, $1.27 exchange rate. That house property had dropped in value in those 2 years to 1.2 million from 1.6 because the real estate market was starting to fall off, right? So now it only takes 497 ounces of gold to buy that same house, which means you had a 484 ounce reserve of gold left over if you'd made that transaction in 2020 or 2022. So that would be worth $1.185 million, that excess amount of gold reserve. So you could have had a $1.2 million house plus an extra $1.2 million in gold if you had done that strategy of just buying that 981 ounces of gold in 1966 and done nothing with it until March of this year. Amazing, eh? Let's talk about various types of investments. So at the very bottom of this inverted pyramid is gold. Then you have paper money, government bonds, T-bills, corporate and municipal bonds, securitized debt, stock market, real estate, private business, non-monetary commodities, derivatives, and unfunded government liabilities. Notice that as you go up this pyramid, the risk profile increases. These are riskier investments, but your ability to hedge against inflation goes down as you go up the pyramid. So your safest, least risky, best inflation hedge investment is down here. Why is that? Because as these other things fail in the economy, people gravitate towards safety, which is also an inflation hedge at the same time. So gold's the only investment, by the way, that's not also someone else's liability on their books. You own it, nobody else has the offsetting transaction. In times of crisis, market confidence erodes and investments tend to fail from the top down until they reach the safe haven of gold, and it's both a risk and inflation hedge. For 2,400 years, gold and silver have been one of the only asset classes that have never failed. Since they're tangible assets with inherent value, their purchasing power will never fall to zero. Can't. Part of the financial assets is completely private and not part of the financial system. Even real estate requires the financial system to transfer title. Gold and silver does not. There's no title to transfer. They can be wholly owned. You can never really own real estate. If you think you can, don't pay your taxes on it and see what happens. You're just renting it, you're a serf. If the government fails, so does its currency. Gold and silver never fail, which is why governments are scared of promoting gold and silver. They're buying it themselves.
I was gonna say, that's
They don't
why
want
it's
you
so
to buy it.
low, yeah.
Their safe haven investment that rise during economic upheaval, like what we're experiencing, war, terrorism, natural disasters, vaccines, whatever. They have a proven track record of performing well both in inflationary and deflationary periods. There's no possible scenario where they both don't rise. Given history and our current economic condition, the direction for selling gold's obvious. Like Maloney, who we just heard from, whatever form the coming wealth transfer takes, those who have the foresight to move their wealth into the safe havens of harbors of gold, silver, and precious metals will reap the benefits. I agree. Okay, so you're convinced. Hopefully you're convinced. You were convinced before you got here. But keep in mind this seminar is designed for a lot of people who may never have heard this message before. Okay? So let's talk about different types of coins that you can get, or types of gold and silver. So you got government versus private mint. So here's an example of government mint, Canada, Royal Canadian Mint, and private mint, the Indian buffalo from the United States. You can buy physical versus paper. So people say, well, I just invest in gold through the stock market. I just buy an ETF that tracks the price of gold. Do you really own it in your own hand? What if the counterparty risk fails and you can't get delivery of the gold that the paper says you own? Or like the cryptocurrency says it's backed by this. Well, what if that fails? Where's the record to prove it? And so what? Okay, so we don't deliver. Sue us. It's in your hand. What do you take? Where can you buy bullion? Lots of different places. You go to a retail store. You go to, like you said, Alberta there, and buy it on this retail shop. You got to provide certain levels of identification. You got to pay with, trackable money. You may have to have a non-disclosure form filled out depending on how much you buy. Somebody else might have just come in and traded in a coin 10 minutes ago. He hasn't had time to vet it. He's running out of inventory. Okay, I'll sell him that coin. Maybe that coin was fake. Maybe he didn't check it thoroughly to make sure it was authentic. We check all that stuff at the office. You can buy it at a bank or post office, which is one of the more expensive places to buy it. For example, Royal Canadian Mint silver coin last year was $55 for one at the post office or CIBC Bank, and we had it at $43. You can buy it on an online merchant. Lots of places you can buy online, but you won't buy all kinds of things online. You don't know what you're really getting. Or you can buy it from a reputable bullion dealer or an agent who knows what he's doing. So do you measure your wealth in ounces? It's one of my little ads that I make up that I send up from time to time. Things to consider. Public or private mint, which one's better for you and why? So public mint is owned by the government. You're just the bearer of it. So if they do a gold confiscation like they did in 1929, they demand you turn it in. They own it. It's theirs. You have to turn it in or go to jail. But if you don't hand it in, you can't trade it. You can't do anything with it other than melt it down. And then that's destruction of government property. Private mint, on the other hand, is not currency. It doesn't have a face value on it, like a Royal Canadian Mint might have a $50 face value on the back of a 1 ounce gold coin. Well, if you cross the border, what do they count that as? Legal tender. It's valued at $50, even though it's $2,500, $2,600 for that coin. You're allowed to take how much currency across the border? 10,000? That's a lot. You can take $10,000 in currency. Anything more than that, you better declare it. Well, if I take it all as gold and silver, how many ounces could I take at $2,500 an ounce? 4. If it was private mint. But if it's $50 a coin, I can take how many?
2,000.
10,000 divided by
50.
50. 200 coins. 200 coins times 2,500 is $500,000. I could literally walk across with $500,000 worth of gold, but it's counted as 10,000 in currency. Now, I wouldn't suggest that strategy because they'll still give you a hassle on it. But there's the lesson. If you want to transport money across an international border, legal tender is the way to go because you have to declare it anyway, but they have to let you go with it. But if I took 5 coins of private mint, that's $12,500 worth, they'd say, you didn't declare that, you confiscate it. So there's considerations. Are you going to move it across the border? If so, you go through us. We just send it through our supply chain channel to one of the 5 warehouses that we have outside of Calgary around the world. Salt Lake City, New York, Hong Kong, Seattle, Toronto, Calgary. Assured quality. You got to make sure that what you're buying is actually assured quality. And we test all that at the office. Cost, you asked about this earlier, retail markup is 5 to 25%. So we average 2 to 4%. So we're at the very low end of the spectrum. We're not charging an arm and a leg, it's really a service that we're providing to help you preserve your wealth. Because if I can help you preserve your wealth, then I can help you grow your wealth with other wealth methods as well. So professional advice, are you getting that, or are you just ordering from an online store and not getting any advice on what to do, what mix you should use, gold, silver, bars, coins, grams, whatever, right? Timing, administrative assistance, education, that's what you get from me. We buy it back as well, so every merchant or store will buy it back at the spot price, minus 0.5% to plus 0.5%, depending on whether we need the inventory or not. So in general, the price you see for gold and silver, that's the buyback price. but you're going to pay about 30% premium on top of that to get the finished product when you buy it. So if you bought it today and sold it back tomorrow, you're down 30% instantly. So it's not meant as a transaction medium in that sense. Now you can barter and trade it. So if I've got a $40 silver coin that may have cost $30 to make, by the time you pay $40 for it, if you want to trade that with someone else on the open market, they're going to value it at $40 because that's what's going to cost them to buy it, right? And if you're selling it back to us to put into storage, we buy it back at the melt value, it's called, which is the spot price. That's the same with every commodity broker out there. We're A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau. So you want to ask the question, who are they? And now the London Bullion Market Association rating. Why is that important? Well, if you want to buy gold or silver to put into a registered account, like a tax-free savings account, registered retirement savings plan, registered education savings plan, whatever, anything registered has to be certified LBMA, otherwise it doesn't qualify. The American Eagles don't qualify. Storage capability, do you have the ability through that agent that you're buying from to store your wealth in a vault somewhere? We do that. And like I said, it's 1% a year, 1/12 of a percent per month, based on the melt value, not the market value, fortunately, of your gold and silver. So we take the number of ounces, multiply it by the spot price, the average spot price for the month, and that's your storage fee. Around 100,000 is about $85 a month. Registered account eligible, so is the money eligible for a registered account? That may be important for you if you want to make a contribution for tax purposes. And currency conversion fees, this is something I can really help with. So if you are putting money into a registered account, it has to be in US dollars, other than in our ESP for education. This plan has to stay in Canadian. So if we have to move your money from Canadian dollars into US, and you just went online to Questrade itself, which is the only brokerage that can do this, or you went to your bank and converted it first, guess what you're going to pay? 3 to 4%. So on $100,000, it costs you $4,000, right? If you go through me, 100,000 converted to Canadian, the bank charge you 4,000. Our best VIP conversion rate would be 0.5%. So would you rather pay the bank 4,000 to do it, or go through me as your advisor? And I call head office at Questrade and I say, guys, I have a client here with this amount of money. What's the best rate you can give me today? Probably 0.5 to 3/4 of a point, not 4% or 3%. You do it yourself, guaranteed 3%. And they save you $3,500 or $100,000 change. So registered investments, a lot of people do have these types of things. And they say, well, should I cash those out and then buy the gold and silver? I really want the gold and silver. No, you don't need to do that. You want it out of the banking system, I get it. You create a Questrade account and transfer the money in cash within the RSP shelter into your Questrade account. You fill in a dealer authorization form that allows us to pull the money for the order when you say I want to buy X number of dollars. Before we make the purchase, we have to send it to head office. They do the foreign exchange at 0.5% or 1% change. Money goes back into the Questrade in US dollars, and now I can make the purchase. Save you a fortune. Okay. So let's go back to this chart. Remember this one? So we already figured out all these numbers. You have to earn about 23% a year to cover taxes and inflation and have a 10% growth per year in order to have a comfortable retirement, right? But that's not possible without a lot of risk. But now we've learned a few things, haven't we? Silver and gold is the hedge against that. So these are various types of things you can buy. So we've got Sunshine Mint, Credit Suisse, United States Mint, Valcambi, which is Swiss, Liberty Dollars, Asahi Refining. We've got the foreign and domestic, Australia, Canada, the U.S., Fiji, all kinds of places, and anywhere from 1 gram to 400 ounces, in bars, ingots, whatever. So I'll help you select that. Now, how do you start? Well, you register for free at thewealthcoaches.com. So I think you guys registered on the site already. Okay. Just go up there to the login. Oops, too far there. Go back. Read the Case for Precious Metals tab, and the other one next to it, Gold and Silver Education. So there's 2 really good pages there. A lot of the examples I had in here are on there. It takes some time to understand what gold and silver is. I know you already want to make a purchase, but a lot of people that might be in a seminar like this haven't done that research yet. But I'm going to constantly update and add things to it, so it's definitely worth looking at. Download the client disclosure form. So if I'm gonna make an online purchase with you, there's a client disclosure form I need you to download. Fill in a few things on there, it answers a few questions. So it's a non-disclosure for me, and you're disclosing stuff to me, I gotta keep all that private. But it also sets out all the policies and the price margins and everything else.
Very user-friendly.
All user-friendly, yeah. Just a PDF, just download it, scan it, sign it, send it back to me. Read the due diligence package and enroll in Why Gold and Silver on the Wealth Academy. So this event which I'm recording, these are the types of things I'm going to do is put this on my online platform so you can go back and watch it again. And that due diligence form is right there. We have another one from our suppliers, a little brochure you can download, and the whole Wealth Coaches brochure as well. You should just download as their PDF. And of course, Why Gold and Silver, I'm taking this, I'm breaking it up into lessons with downloadable attachments and reference material and everything else. It's going to be a structured course, not just a seminar. And you can view the catalog. So on my site, I don't have live pricing. Every few months I update it just to give you a reference point. But I have a whole lot of different product there. You can take a look at what those were worth on a particular day. I think the last time I updated was August, somewhere in there. But you get an idea what the types of product is that we have, and then I help you select it based on your budget. And then just request a quote. So the process is simple. Once you say I've got X number of dollars to invest, and I get your profile, I look at, okay, here's your risk profile, here's your long-term time horizon. This is the amount that you want to invest today, whether it's RSP or non-RSP. Here's the product selection I suggest for you. You agree to it. I send you a quote, which is updated every minute, by the way. So that quote is a static time in history. You say, yeah, I approve that. Send it back to me. I get on the phone. At some point during that day, if the prices are going down, I wait. If they're going up, I order right away. If the price changes more than 1% either direction, I call you first before I say, can we go ahead? Otherwise, I just go ahead. I've got your pre-authorization to have a 1% change within the day. And then, after you fill in the quote, send it back. Of course, I contact you directly. So, the Wealth Academy is our website. TheWealthCoaches.com is our main website. The Wealth Academy is the shortcut to our school. We've got something called a personal financial review on there. Now, normally I charge $200 for that personal financial review. It's a 8-page document. Has the Excel spreadsheet or a PDF version. The Excel is the one I like because you just fill in the data and calculates it all for you. But we track your income, your expenses, your assets, your liabilities, your debt situation, your insurance portfolio. Make sure you're covered for things that you might need to be covered for. And then your goals, your financial goals. Once I have a better picture of who you are, what you want out of life financially, I can make the best recommendations. So you fill that in, send it back to me, I'll do that assessment. Now, when someone's investing $10,000 or more with me, I do that for free. I don't charge you $200. Okay? So I'm going to send you that anyway, the Excel version, so you can fill it in. That's a lot easier than adding up all the math yourself. So that's basically my presentation on Why Gold and Silver. So, I recommend you enroll in this course. It's on my site. It's Mike Maloney's Hidden Secrets of Money. It's a 10-episode series he's done over the last 10 years. Great information in there. It's about 8-9 hours worth of material. But you'll really understand a lot about what I've just summarized here today. It's a really good series. He doesn't charge for it. Remember, if you can't hold it in your hand, you don't really own it, whatever the investment is. Qualities of gold: storable, portable, tradable, durable, beautiful and alluring, great hedge against inflation, private, that's the big thing. Nobody knows you got it unless you open your mouth. And of course, secure. That's how you get a hold of me.